Thanks for tuning in. MB12 can confirm that Dr. Myles Munroe, his wife, and several others were killed in a plane crash at the Grand Bahama shipyard today as they were en route to a leadership conference on that island. 9 souls, including Dr. Munroe, who was 60, his wife Ruth Ann, and Dr. Richard Pinder, have been lost due to the Learjet they were flying on going down at the shipyard sometime after 5 this afternoon. The Department of Civil Aviation has confirmed that the jet, which departed Lynden Pindling International Airport for Grand Bahama International Airport at 4:07 p.m. with 9 people on board, crashed while making an approach for landing at Grand Bahama International Airport at 5:10 p.m. Reports are that the aircraft was flying low to avoid inclement weather and crashed into a structure at the shipyard. Eyewitnesses say the plane exploded on impact and crashed into the yard. At last report, we were told that there were no survivors. Civil Aviation said the Grand Bahama Airport Company Crash Fire Rescue Department responded to the incident, and the police and Bahamas Air Sea Rescue were on scene. The department said a full-scale investigation will commence tomorrow morning at daylight, which will include the Department of Civil Aviation Aircraft Accident Investigation Prevention Unit. Dr. Munroe was on his way to a leadership conference in Grand Bahama. He said the leadership conference was to highlight the leadership dilemma he says the country is facing as older leaders are not passing the baton. Munroe said right now young emerging leaders are having difficulty with those who have been in the system for a while.
Politically speaking, I think that we are in a leadership dilemma. We are at the point in history where transition is taking place. And no one is deciding that. Life is deciding that. Most of the older leaders who were part of our historical journey fading into the sunset. The realities are effective leaders always prepare their replacements. They mentor and they create succession.
Munroe said he had a dream once about the funeral of a celebrated track and field athlete. In the dream, he said the athlete was lying in his coffin in his running uniform, clutching a baton. As mourners filed past, Munroe said he realized what the dream was about when he woke up.
It was about people dying with the baton. You know, instead of passing it on. And I was thinking, the young person who's supposed to lead next have to go to that casket, pry the baton out of the dead man's hand just to take it to the next leg. This may be what we're struggling with here. People would rather die with the position than pass it on. And so we find the young people having to fight to get it. Great leaders pass it on before they die, and they live to see the other runner run. Hopefully we'll get there in the Bahamas.
While members of Bahamas Faith Ministries reacting tonight to Munroe's tragic death, Vonnie Toot has the story.
An emotional scene here at Bahamas Faith Ministries International, where hundreds of church members gathered after receiving reports that their president, Dr. Myles Munroe, may have died in a plane crash in Grand Bahama. Well, as they arrived here, they got the heartbreaking confirmation that Dr. Munroe, his wife Ruth Ann, their pastor Richard Pinder, 2 pilots, a foreigner, and others did in fact die in that plane crash in the Grand Bahama shipyard. As tears streamed down their faces, devastated members of Bahamas Faith Ministries International clung to each other for support as news spread of Munroe's tragic death. Church members trickled into the Diplomat Center at first, demanding answers. Then came the news everyone dreaded from Pastor Dave Burrows.
We unfortunately confirm that there was a plane crash in Freeport, Grand Bahama this afternoon. The aircraft involved belonged to Dr. Myles Munroe, founder, president, and senior pastor of Bahamas Faith Ministries International, who was on board at the time, along with his wife Ruth Ann, and Dr. Richard Pinder, Senior Vice President and Pastor of Bahamas Faith Ministries. There were additional passengers and 2 pilots on board. We are not able to release further information on the other passengers pending notification of kin. This is the current extent of information we have at this time, and we are preparing a further update and press release within the next few hours once we have received additional information. We are currently in contact with all of the relevant government agencies and aviation authorities in an effort to determine the events leading to this unfortunate tragedy. We thank all Bahamians and those who have called from the international community for your prayers and expressions of comfort.
Burroughs explained while Dr. Munroe and his wife were in Grand Bahama.
The reason for the trip was the conference in Freeport that was scheduled to begin tomorrow. And there were other members and employees of the church and other on a foreign visitor.
Burroughs, who spoke with reporters following an emergency board meeting at BFM tonight, told reporters that both of Munroe's children are aware and they visited that crash site in Grand Bahama. He says Munroe would want them to move on.
We are all trying to console each other at this point in time because it's a terrible shock and it's very difficult for everybody. So we are just calling on the faith that we have.
Burroughs added that Munroe was the foundation of BFM and everyone is in shock.
Dr. Munroe is our foundation. He's the visionary. He is the the driving force behind everything that we've done, and he's been the inspiration for all of the people here in this boardroom and for people worldwide. We've already received calls from all over the world. I mean, many people, government officials, and so on. And so we really have to just get together as a church and regroup and determine where we go from here.
Board members say they plan to hold a prayer meeting tomorrow night, and they're not only inviting church members, but members of the public who would like to mourn the man who has touched so many lives. At this point, he says all they can do is pray. Prime Minister Perry Christie is currently holding a news conference on Dr. Myles Munroe's death at the office of the Prime Minister. We'll have that for you in a later newscast. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonique Tude.